96.5 KLH. How are you? Dave and Doreen, and we're hosting Giving Tuesday, a holiday of miracles. We're taking advantage of the fact that it's Giving Tuesday all around the world, and what we want to do is raise as much money today as possible for Children's Wisconsin. And in an effort to do that, we're talking to parents, caregivers, kids all day long. Some incredible stories, including this one. Let's welcome Ethan and Rhiannon Bickle. How are you guys doing today?
Great. How are you?
Great.
We're good. Where you got? Are you guys? Do you live in Racine or?
Yes.
Okay, that's where you live. Okay. Tell us about your interaction with Children's. Take us back to what was happening. We'll start with Mom, Rhiannon. What was happening with your daughter last fall? And by the way, I should preface this by saying, since we're going to be talking about medical issues, that you're a nurse.
Yes.
So tell us what you observed.
Like her whole story, the medical part of it, or?
Sure. But I think it's important that people know that can happen to anybody at any time. Mm-hmm. And yes. You just never know.
Okay. So yes, this was totally rare and random. She's a perfectly healthy kid, barely ever gets a cold. And she just was having fevers. We all kind of had a cold last October. And she actually didn't have cold symptoms, but she had a fever. She got checked out by her primary. They just said probably a cold virus, keep an eye on it. 3 days later, still having fevers, still had no symptoms of anything else, tired, had a little bit of a headache. So we took her to urgent care. She got tested for strep throat. It was positive, so they started her on antibiotics, and we went home. And that was Sunday afternoon. So Tuesday morning, I had heard her get up and take a shower. I checked on her, had her take her antibiotics, and she took her antibiotics, and then I heard her go take a shower, and then I went to go check on her after her shower, and she looked like she had a stroke. She was sitting up on the edge of her bed, just in a daze, kind of slouched over. I'm yelling and like clapping in her face.
And how old is she at this time?
11.
11. Okay.
Yes. So, and I'm like that. It was like she couldn't even hear me. And so I know the signs of a stroke. That's why I just kind of explain it as it looked like she had a stroke. I just kind of had her arm and saw if she could stand, and she kind of followed what I was having her do. So her body muscle memory was there, and I walked her right down the stairs out to the car, and we took off and headed straight for the emergency room. And yeah, the next 6 weeks after that was just.
Okay. So you observed this and you have no clue what's going on. When you got her to the emergency room, what did they do?
First thing was we all kind of thought was low blood sugar.
That's what we were hoping. I think.
Hoping and praying. Because she hadn't eaten in a few days, which in the reality wouldn't happen to a normal person without diabetes if they have a cold. If they're not eating, your body compensates.
Right.
We're just hoping for anything that's fixable.
Sure.
And shocked at how this could happen. I mean, he checked on her at 5 a.m. and this was now like noon. So, I mean, she hadn't fallen. I mean, she had just taken a shower. So we're just like
baffled.
Yeah, just shocked. And they checked the blood sugar and it was normal. And that was when we just started I think I was crying and we're like, what is happening? This makes no sense. This kid's never even really been sick. I don't even think she's ever had stomach flu. I mean, she's just super healthy.
And you could see the concern at that point with the emergency room. That's when we knew we were.
I mean, they were moving. I mean, there was like, now there's two, quick. Now there were like 2 people taking care of her. The doctor's in there. You could tell this wasn't just like your normal emergency room.
So at what point did they say, go to Children's?
So right away, me and the doctor were talking. I have a background in EMS as well. So I'm medical as well. And he came in and talked to us once we knew more was going on. He said, why don't we get the children's flight crew coming at this point, because we may not be able to treat this. And that's exactly what he's supposed to do. I'm so grateful for him doing that.
Yeah.
How quick he moved.
Yeah.
And getting in action.
Even before they knew what was causing it, he was able to say like clearly something wrong, and she needs the best,
Right.
The experts.
Then they did
it was so fast. It was perfect.
They did the brain scan while we were down there in the ER. They did a quick scan to see what was going on after we knew the blood sugar was fine. And that's when they realized her brain was actually being pushed over 8 millimeters due to fluid, and they didn't know what the fluid was. But by that time, the flight crew was already coming down. So within 2 hours of being in the ER, they were in the back of the ambulance heading up to Children's.
So when they got to Children's, how quickly did they diagnose what was exactly wrong with her?
So at the Kenosha Hospital, they did the head CT and saw the fluid, and they seemed to know what it was at that point because the flight team had things they needed to treat her, so that she started getting treatment actually from Children's in the Kenosha emergency room.
How would they know?
So this is a rare thing. Evidently, we've been told that happens in her age group, maybe one kid a year, if that. A sinus infection that somehow travels to the brain. Just inexplicable. They have not yet been able to determine why or how the sinus infection. I mean, it's just she had no symptoms of a sinus infection. So
what you're saying though is that without the experience, there's
Right.
no
Oh,
way,
absolutely.
right? There's like no way they know what's going on.
Correct.
Okay.
There's not enough of these cases.
No,
so
it's
getting
so
one a
rare.
year, there's no treatment of care for this because there hasn't been enough cases. But they knew exactly what they were dealing with, and they knew exactly what they had to do. And that made us so comfortable because, I mean, we wheeled into Children's Hospital, and then an hour and a half later, she's getting brain surgery.
Yeah.
And 12 hours before, this is a normal kid that just
Wow.
Okay.
They
That is just beyond shocking as parents.
Yeah.
How do you digest that information?
Right.
It's almost impossible to do that.
I'll tell you what, that's the one thing I'll say about Children's, and Dr. Kim in particular, she was the first neurosurgeon, all the doctors there. They're phenomenal. There's not many places in this world where you're going to go as a parent and you're going to be like, sure, you can cut into my child's brain
Yeah.
in the middle of the night. I have no clue what's going on, but I trust you. But no, this is one place,
Right.
the training that they have to go through just to be an attending at a place like that.
Now you, from what I understand, she had some pretty, I guess I hate to use the word novel because of the coronavirus thing, but she had novel treatments, right? Things that have not been done
Yes.
before because they're willing and able to do things obviously with your consent.
Right.
What are some of the things, or what is the surgery that she underwent? What happened?
They did a washout that first night, and then left her skull bone off a
Do you want
large.
to tell them what a washout is?
To my knowledge, like they take the bone off, and they don't want to like clean the infection out. They just kind of rinse it off.
Don't touch the brain.
Yeah, they
Touching
don't.
the brain equals brain damage.
Yeah, so
don't touch it.
there are cases where they have to, but for her, they were hoping that it was early enough, which luckily it was. It was still very thin infection fluid. It wasn't very thick. And they did tell us that very first time we met them when they were preparing us and telling us what was going on, that this was going to be needed to be done multiple times. So we were fully aware that this was not her only surgery, because they're kind of just rinsing the fluid out of the brain and then hoping that the antibiotics they're giving her through the IV will be enough to kill off the bacteria, but most likely it won't be, which it wasn't. So that happened 2 more times. And they also cleaned out her sinuses 2 times. But after I think it was like 2 weeks, she still was having very high fevers that they couldn't explain. They were saying, everything was
Paralyzed.
everything was cleaned out. She was so sick. Her cultures, they were taking cultures from her brain drains plus blood cultures and everything else to try to determine if there was a bug in there still that they had missed, and everything's coming back that there's no infection, but she just was still so sick, is when they called in Dr. Willoughby.
And we didn't know this at the time either, but Dr. Willoughby is actually pretty famous for he's the doctor that came up with the Milwaukee protocol for
rabies.
And kept that child alive.
Which no one even told us they kept it. They weren't like, this is this
famous guy.
You know, we didn't know at the time. He just seemed like a normal guy and just talked to us like, you know, like we were his neighbor. I mean, he just explained everything and made us feel very comfortable and just said, these are things I'm willing to try. The risk is very minimal for any side effect to be harmful. Are you okay with us trying this? And he talked to the ICU doctor and we were like, you guys do everything, you know,
Sure.
If this is something that's safe, I mean, just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
First, after that first hyperbaric treatment, I mean, you could tell it was working, and she had them every day for
16 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
16 trips she did.
Well, how many days were you guys? How many days was she in the hospital by the when you first went in, and then by the time she got released?
46.
46. Wow.
Oh, and then how is she now?
Like nothing ever happened.
Wow.
A 12-year-old kid, you wouldn't, honestly, if you saw her today, other than thinking she has a short haircut.
Yeah.
I mean, and they did tell us they didn't know if she would ever be that way again. They said, you know, she needs a lot of therapy and rehab, and she may never fully recover. And some people on the flight team and other people in the hospital use the word miracle a few times, which I'm sure, you know, as a nurse, you know, there's medical and scientific reasons why somebody gets better. You don't, like, I have used the word miracle maybe twice in the past 7 years of being a nurse, where it was just something we couldn't really explain how the person got better.
Right.
Yeah.
And so from a place like that, where they see kids recover from things that don't make sense, to describe her that way.
And I think part of it was being in a place.
Just the best thing ever.
Part of it was being in a place where they're willing to try those treatments. So the two, I guess, somewhat experimental, if you would call them, were the hyperbaric treatments. And then they also gave her some B12 infusions. So we think of B12 as like you take it for energy.
Right.
Something that you use to treat like poisonings or carbon monoxide. Yeah. So they hadn't really ever tried it for something like this, but this was the theory that Dr. Willoughby had, and he was right. So
to do a very long MRI to see if her brain was being like paralyzed or toxic gases or something to do with the bacteria. And yeah, basically this long MRI, it took like an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes with some special,
it was the spec.
I don't know. I mean, most places don't even have that MRI. I mean, I've never heard of it. And so, you know, they just knew, you know, they had all of the equipment and the things that they needed to diagnose her and treat her. It was like nothing was out of reach. And and we just kept thinking, what if we didn't live here? What if we, you know, so
and
many,
you got your child back.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing. Like, there's certain parts of this country to where if you're living there and you don't have a place like Children's Hospital, she's not sitting here, at least not the same kid that she was.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
We kind of forget about that being in our backyard with children. So
yeah. And the hyperbaric, I mean, Children's shares that with Aurora and with Freighter. They have those hyperbaric capabilities. I mean, they didn't have that. No, I do not think she would have made that recovery. It completely cured everything that was going on with her, along with all of the other treatment. But that was like the life-saving treatment right there.
Well, thank you guys for sharing the story. Ethan, Rhiannon, thank you. And obviously it's great to hear that Raynah is back and I mean, she kind of went away for 46 days and came back good, if not better than new.
Right.
Because of Children's Wisconsin, really, truly because of Children's. Yeah. Thank you guys. We appreciate it. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. Great, guys. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you again.
You too.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.